Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Hello, music lovers, and welcome back to another album fight. We are back to album v. album. Mixtapes were fun, but we're back to album v. album, and we have a really good matchup to start things off again. Over to our corner call from Phil.
Today's album fight is a 9-round battle between two critically acclaimed albums released in the same year. In the red corner, salvaging songs from a discarded rock opera to follow up Tommy, we have The Who with their 5th studio album from 1971, Who's Next? And their opponent in the blue corner, with a concept album about society's hatred, suffering, and injustice, we have Marvin Gaye and his 11th studio album from 1971, What's Going On? Let's get ready to ramble. Take it away, judges.
That's right. We have two monster albums in the ring. We are talking about What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, his 11th studio album, and a critical darling. This album appears on so many best of lists. It's kind of a concept album, so we'll see how it does in the song v song format. But this one came in 6th on the Rolling Stone 500 Greatest Albums of All Time. And then, of course, it's going up against Who's Next by The Who, The Who's 5th studio album, and another critical darling here, often called The Who's best album by most music critics. This one came in 28 on the Rolling Stone 500 albums. So we're talking two of them in the top 30 on that list. I don't know if it means a ton, but it does mean something. Before I introduce our judges, let's hear the numbers from Richard. Richard, what are the numbers telling us for these two albums?
We say it all the time, and this is one of those instances where styles make fights. On one hand, we've got What's Going On from Marvin Gaye, socially conscious, R&B, and then we've got the loud and brash Who's Next. Both of these albums are critically acclaimed. Both of them have really high review scores. Both of them are ranked very high in the year that they were put out. This fight is so even, I came up with a 15th category. So 15 categories were used for this fight. I figured out a 15th category, hoping to kind of break the tie that it was looking like we were looking at with this fight. And it just made it even more even. So what we're looking at here is a dead even fight. So, styles make fights. It's going to come down to really judges' preferences on this. I will say, in the 4 song v song categories, The Who came out pretty far ahead. But then with critical and with popularity as far as like sales and stuff like that, the fight really gets evened out at that point. So, in looking at this fight, I found something fascinating in that the first round is What's Going On versus Baba O'Reilly. Probably the two songs that these bands are most critically known for. This has to be one of the strongest, if not the strongest first round we've ever had. So in light, what looks to be a completely even fight from pure numbers, this is as objective as we can get, this is pure numbers, looking so even, I'm going to make the bold human prediction here that whoever wins the first round is probably going to win the fight. It's a bold prediction. Let's see if I'm right. Back to you guys.
Yeah, you're right. This is going to be a tough one, and that first round is going to be a killer.
Hey, this is Pete. Real quick, I just want to let you guys know we are proud to announce our official support of Save the Brave, a certified nonprofit 501c3 with a charter of helping veterans with post-traumatic stress. Here's how you can help. Go to SaveTheBrave.com, click on the link on the website, and my recommendation is this. Subscribe. Give them $20 a month. You've got subscriptions you can turn off right now that you're not using that are $20 a month. Swap that out. Get involved. Let's help these folks out.
Yeah, you're right. This is going to be a tough one, and that first round is going to be a killer. Of course, talking about the first round, we have to introduce our judges, and I'm going to start with our first-time judge, Eric Hundley. Eric, what are you thinking about this whole thing we roped you into here?
Maybe I shouldn't have answered that email.
Well, I'm glad you did, and I am looking forward to hearing a fresh new voice in the album fight judging arena. We have also judge number 2, Todd Nemeth. Todd. Hello. Nice to have you back on with one killer album fight lined up. How are you feeling after doing your notes?
Yeah, I listened to both albums about a zillion times in my life, so I'm excited to see what happens when they go against each other.
Great. And finally, our third judge is the one and only Pete Turner, the executive producer of Break It Down Show. Pete, how's it feel to have the tuxedo t-shirt back on?
Hello. Apparently, my swimming has made my tuxedo t-shirt a little tighter because I'm just so massively huge, and I'm excited to do this fight.
I'm excited to have you guys on, and I've rambled long enough. So it is time for us to start the fight. First up, we have round 1, which is one son of a bitch of a first round. We've got Baba O'Riley going up against What's Going On, and Eric, the virgin, gets the first round.
Great. Let me get it out of the way. This round actually, I feel, symbolizes everything about the two albums. You could almost just take this track off, and there's some weird parallels. One, you have Marvin Gaye, who starting off expressing everything going on around him, and he's light in sound and feel of music, but his message is very dark. It's pretty bleak. Very sad album. His whole life is very sad. The Who, on the other hand, has a harder edged beginning, but yet their message is light. So I like the juxtaposition of the two. What also, you mentioned the concept album. It's kind of ironic that Marvin Gaye's is a song cycle, but yet The Who's is an aborted concept album. They both are released the same year. So there's just all these strange pairings between the two, and both of them are also very spiritual. So we'll kick it off with the first one, and I had a nightmare of a time because I never really listened to the album. I've heard the song What's Going On before, but didn't listen to Marvin Gaye much. And The Who has been in and out of my life pretty much. I've always been a fan. Baba O'Riley is one of those songs that when it comes on, I always like it. It never gets old. It's one of those songs you just feel kind of pumped. If it's on a TV show and a scene's starting to happen, you're just like, oh, click it up just a couple notches. Even though you've heard it a million times, it's that kind of song. Going against What's Going On. What's Going On is such a smooth rendition, and I love how they use the sound effects and the talking where you feel like you are walking into a party. You know, you're part of it. You can feel like he's having a genuine conversation. He's really thinking and speaking with you like you are part of it. And it's a very immersive, and I love that type of sound and concept albums with Pink Floyd and things like that. So essentially, I went back and forth on these two. And I will say that I immediately, from the outset, like Baba O'Riley better. I've just always been more inclined with The Who and things like that. But I feel like the Marvin Gaye album I have to listen to multiple times to get any nuance out of it. And the more I listened to it, it crept slightly ahead. So I went 10-9. What's Going On?
Great first round. I got to say, I listened to both of these to prep for the show as well, and I'm glad I'm not judging. I compuboxed like I always do, and I went back and forth on my scores too. Killer first round to have to make a choice on. So well done. Your intro to album fight is over. And we will move over to Todd for his assessment here. Todd, what do you think round 1?
All right. Yeah, this was extremely difficult to score, and both these albums are great. Another parallel, I think Eric pointed out a lot of great parallels. Another parallel, they have like the two best bassists working, James Jamerson and John Entwistle. And I was listening to this as we were driving around the area here, and I with my son, and I'm like, listen to that bass. And I realized like I kept keying in on the bass. So Baba O'Reilly / Teenage Wasteland, I didn't realize this was all kind of an aborted concept album and the Lifehouse project. I didn't understand that, but it sort of makes sense. This whole idea of like throwing people into a computer and then seeing what comes out. I feel like Pete Townsend had the idea. Mark Zuckerberg did something completely different with that concept. But what Pete Townsend did is pretty good. And what I like about Baba O'Reilly is you can listen to it as sort of 20th century composition, and also as a kick-ass rock song. It has that minimalist Terry Riley thing going on. And though I must say I saw Terry Riley play with the San Francisco Symphony, it didn't sound anything like Baba O'Reilly, but I get the idea of that minimalist thing going through the whole time, and it's really cool. What's Going On? This is an amazing song. I have to say I like the single edit version better. I don't know if you guys listen to that. It's also on Spotify, and it has a little bit less production, which brings out sort of the bass and the rhythm guitar, and I think that's a much better version. That's the one I would listen to if I were to make a playlist. So What's Going On is great. It has that two vocals going on at the same time. It was an accident where a guy was singing and he just accidentally potted up both versions of it, and it sounds so great together. It's like something between double tracking and call and response, and that works really well. Later on in the album, it doesn't work so well with some of the stuff that they do. But the thing with What's Going On is that bass line is just amazing. I know the guy was drunk, James Jamerson, and he recorded it lying on the floor, kind of like Lennon did with Come Together, but it's really good. The other thing about What's Going On I didn't realize is that 2 Detroit Lions sing backup on this song, which makes it even cooler. But anyway, this one, I would say Marvin Gaye takes this 10-9.
Okay, so we've got two for Marvin. Pete, you gonna make it unanimous for us?
Yeah, let's do it. What's Going On? It's one of the top 10 or 20 songs of all time, according to a lot of different sources. And it's also the anchor song for one of the best albums of all time. So let's not get too fancy. Let's just understand that this is Marvin Gaye at Marvin Gaye's peak right here in this album. His own struggles that Eric sort of alluded to. One of the things that I've learned from doing this is that certain musicians are just entirely too connected emotionally to the world, and they suffer for it. Sly Stone is one of those guys where he just can't turn off the music that pours through his head. I mean, he's alive, but gosh, he's not the man he was, 50 years ago back when this happened. But these guys are really close to reality. And then I looked at the dates of death for John Lennon and Marvin Gaye, and it was 4 years, 4 months apart. And here's these two icons, these voices that are taken from us way too early. And I thought, gosh, 4 months ago, that was May of 2015. And I was probably carrying someone's couch in San Francisco then. So it's not very long ago. And if I really thought about it, I probably could think about the day, what that day was like. So these voices get snuffed out, and gosh, it's just terrible that we lost both of those guys too soon. The Who, boy, they jump out of the gate with a great song. This was not an easy round. Baba O'Reilly, the synthesizer, and Pete Townsend. As I went through the album, I continue to say, goodness gracious, like Pete Townsend is just, as all the accolades he gets, he's still underrated. He puts all of the work in on this album, and it really shines. The Who is a fantastic band, and I need to give them more respect. Either way, What's Going On still speaks to us 50 years later, and it will probably continue to do that for a long time. For me, it's What's Going On, 10-9.
Yeah, I don't want to put words in any of the three of your mouths, but I would say that Baba O'Reilly could probably beat just about any other song coming off of that opposing album or a lot of other albums.
I agree. It is the album.
Yeah, I had too many things to say about these songs. I looked at my notes. It's like 2 pages. I had to cut out most of it, for these two songs in particular. But yeah, it's amazing.
The foreshadowing and What's Going On about his father, Don't Escalate, is creepy. It gives me chills.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. Well, that's it for round one, and we do have a unanimous round to start out the fight, but who knows what's going to happen? I'd love to know, so let's move on to round two, where we have Bargain going up against What's Happening, Brother, and Todd leads us off in this round.
All right. So I was listening closely to Bargain this time, and I'm listening to lyrics. I'm like, this is just too messed up to be a love song. It's just too weird. And so it turns out it is an ode to Meher Baba and about, letting go of things and being more spiritual. So, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. I'm suspicious of rock stars who lecture us about the evils of material possessions and stuff, but this really, it's pretty adamant and it's so extreme that it works well. And I have a note here that like only the Who could make spirituality sound sort of Dionysian, but it's really, really good. What's Happening, Brother is another great song. Again, the bass is just amazing. James Jammers said, I love this guy. And that's a guy who was troubled and his life was really cut short, unfortunately. That sort of chromatic descending part in the verse, I love that a lot. One thing I'd say is that the background singers are a little bit shrill. I think it's the Andantes, and it gets a little bit like screechy, just a tiny bit. I think Marvin Gaye takes this one pretty easily, 10-9.
Okay, so Marvin is off to a really good start with Todd. Pete, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to use the boxing analogy since that's how we scored these things. Townsend comes into the ring. He was able to stick with Marvin Gaye's biggest punches and just, move around the ring. And Bob O'Reilly was stiff competition for one of the best songs of all time. And here again, we see Townsend up to the task. And there's just so much to love in this song, Bargain. When Townsend is writing at the elite level and he's really sticking those lyrical notes, and then he's backed up by Moon and Entwistle and Daltrey, it's a lot to withstand. What's Happening, Brother, is I get that the theme of the concept of the album is to sort of have like one big long conversation. So that's fine. But What's Happening, Brother doesn't seem to separate really enough from what's going on. And when I compare those two together, what's going on from What's Happening, Brother, one is clearly superior to the other. And since Townsend was really hammering away during Baba O'Reilly, I don't see the same drop-off between Baba and Bargain. So I'm going to give this round to The Who and Bargain 10-9.
Okay, so we have a split, and Eric, you get to be tiebreaker here.
All right, I think Pete is definitely onto something, and that's something I feel about the Marvin Gaye album. It's a deeply personal album. Honestly, when Berry Gordy heard it, he said it was the worst album he'd ever heard. And I feel like Marvin Gaye put that album out and he didn't give a shit if anybody liked it. Excuse the language. And because it is so personal to Marvin Gaye, that's what I like about the album. Is I feel in it, it's like, this is my message. He's just putting it out there. The problem with that, though, is you can't quite tell that you're into another song in some ways. If you're not paying attention, you're like, wait, what's going on? Oh, it changed a little, but you're still sort of listening to the same vibe and feel. And one of the elements that I really love about The Who, and all great musicians, are dynamics. And The Who famously, they come in strong, they go soft, strong, soft. And I feel like with A Bargain, we start seeing the dynamics pick up. And I give it to The Bargain, 10-9.
Okay. And that does it for round 2. Thanks, guys. Let's move right into round 3 with Love Ain't for Keeping versus Flying High and The Friendly Sky. 2 long titles, so Pete's going to love this one. Yeah. Pete, you're up first.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a tough round for me. I think the toughest round of the fight because I wasn't crazy about either song. I usually like songs like Flying High and The Friendly Sky because it's Marvin sort of deconstructing his own, and his wife at the time, deconstructing the addiction and the demons and all that stuff. But when I thought about the other songs and the people who have done this, I thought about Mr. Brownstone, I thought about Kurt Cobain, and then I thought about Lane Staley, and I realized Flying High in The Friendly Sky is nothing compared to what Lane Staley did in Man in a Box or any other song. So it really kind of put that into perspective. And as I was trying to, because I struggled with the concept and separating songs from one another, especially with the heights that What's Going On and Mercy, Mercy Me get to. So I started to this round helped me realize that as I started to put it into context, like what he's saying, his struggles and everything else. And I think there's more in what's in Flying High than what Marvin was able to give us. I think in general, What's Going On suffers from a little self-production problems. You put someone else in there who's able to hold Marvin to task and maybe get that extra out of him. I think it's great commentary that Eric just provided with us. He kind of maybe didn't care, and maybe having someone from the Gordy family besides his wife in the room, I think it would have helped this album out. Even though I didn't really care for Love Ain't for Keeping, I had to go with that song 10-9. I had to go with that song 10-9. So Love Ain't for Keeping 10-9.
Okay, so the Who are off to a lead here in round 3. Eric, you're up next.
This is a hard one because I agree with everything Pete said, and I'm going to throw in the Velvet Underground Heroine, by the way, as crowning achievement about drugs. I don't think he quite reached it, but I feel like he expressed himself and his pain as best he could. One thing that's interesting about Marvin Gaye is his lyrics are not that complex. He really doesn't go for giant metaphors. He's pretty direct, and it's almost childlike. I feel in some ways, very plain. He's just speaking very plainly how he feels. Now, I also agree. I don't really care for Love Ain't for Keeping. It's kind of like it's there. So I'm giving that slight edge the other way, 10-9. I'd almost go 9-8.
It's a 10-point must. So have to give. Sometimes you have to give songs you don't love a 10 just because you love them. You don't love them a little less than you don't love another one. Todd, take us home here on round 3.
All right. Yeah, so I got a contact high from Flying High in the Friendly Sky. So that maybe that influenced me a little bit. I agree with everything you guys said. I mean, the production and sort of the song is very kind of, it's like amorphous and sort of baggy. It's hard to key into a little bit, and it's extremely personal. The Marvin Gaye, this album, What's Going On, like you said, it's a tone poem. It's a song cycle. It's like tonally they're very similar, and they have a lot of the same themes. Obviously, very very similar melody, stuff like that. And it can get a little bit samey, and it's hard to do, like have the contrast. Whereas with Who's Next, I don't think the Who were even involved with the sequencing of the album. I think they just put it in, the producers just put it in whatever order they wanted to. So it's extremely different in that way. And here you can see where that sort of affects the quality and sort of the perception of the album. And by the way, we're talking about drug songs and stuff. My thinking when I listened to this was it was like Curtis Mayfield, Superfly, maybe super influenced by that, but that came out a year later. So I think it was the other way around.
Probably, yeah.
But that was my first thought. I was like, oh, Superfly ripoff. So that's enough about that song. Love Ain't for Keeping. I really like this song. You guys don't care for it. I think it's so great, like just so acousticy. And Pete Townsend, amazing acoustic work with 2 guitars playing off each other when it's even himself. I think this is amazing. There's the harder rock version that they discarded. You can listen to that on Odds and Sods, which is pretty good. I don't know if you've heard that. Leslie West from Mountain plays lead guitar on that version, and I don't think it's as good as this acoustic version. It's just kind of, it moves really well, it flows really well, and just that intricate guitar work is amazing. Pete Townsend, like Pete was saying, is an amazing genius. Like, he's pretentious, and maybe like half his ideas work out, and maybe half of them fall apart or deflate under their own weight. It's amazing, like he'll do that and be like, oh, let's write a rock opera about computers and society or whatever, and then he will play this amazing thrashy guitar solo. He's like full stack, there's like everything from like modifying his guitar to like writing like an epic 5 opera cycle or whatever. I mean, it's amazing the range and breadth of what he can do, and he's completely fearless, for putting stuff like that together. Anyway, this one was easy for me, and the Who, Love Ain't for Keeping, wins this against Flying High, 10-9.
Okay, thank you for that. And that brings us up to round 4. We have My Wife versus Save the Children. And we come back round to Eric starting us off again.
I hate to do this. I just really don't care for My Wife. Love the Ox, but this song it gets kind of cheesy. I'm sorry, I didn't get into it. Save the Children, that's kind of a stretch too. I like his call and response because he has a beautiful voice. It's also a little borderline, though. That's another one that if I could, I'd say 9-8. But I'm going to give it to Marvin Gaye, 10-9.
Okay, fair enough. Todd, give us your take on round 4.
All right. So let's start with Save the Children. Yeah, I'm not crazy about that speaking the lyrics and then singing the lyrics right after. I think this is what I was saying. Like, in What's Going On, it works really well where they're singing together. and it's sort of two accidental tracks. And then here I think they're doing it on purpose, and they're not catching lightning in a bottle. The lyrics are kind of intense. It's like, who is willing to try to save a world that is destined to die? So this is some pretty bleak stuff. But then at the same time, it's like kind of drippy in a way as well. I wasn't crazy about it. 3.5 minutes in, roughly, it kind of jumps into double time, and then it starts to move, and I'm like, okay, now we got a song going. But I wasn't overall crazy about this. Now, My Wife is a weird song. Like, this is weird, fitting into the Who catalog. The humor is certainly dated. It reminded me of the Lockhorns. I used to read that as a kid in the comics page, and it's like, oh, my wife's going to hit me with a rolling pin. So it's super dated. But the way John Entwistle sings it, like the melody is hilarious, where he just kind of like flails like, and he has this funny way of singing it. And I didn't realize he played everything on this, like the piano, bass. He did the vocals. He even played the horn stabs, which I think are brilliant. So it is a super weird song, but it's endearing to me for some reason. So My Wife takes this 10-9.
Okay.
Sorry, children.
Yeah. Again, I'm not judging, just hosting. I had an opinion of Save the Children. I'll probably save for myself.
Oh, I want to hear it now.
Seriously.
Yeah, come on.
Well, do you remember from the Janet Jackson fight, there was a song about like, what about the children and whatever? And that song was kind of bad too. It's like kind of had the same problems that this one did.
Yeah, well, since you asked, I felt it was a little too sing-songy. The back and forth and the message gets lost in the delivery, I think. That was my thought on Save the Children. That's why I picked My Wife.
All right, so My Wife versus Save the Children. Take My Wife, please. So actually, I like My Wife a little bit better. I wasn't crazy about either song. I felt like the Who were just a little bit off in this. They didn't quite get. Look, I'm comparing this to Baba O'Reilly, and the Who's an incredible band. So they're just a little off is already incredible. But between Moon and Entwistle and his singing, I just felt like they were a shade or two less than what they normally are. The horns that were in Marvin's album were great, but also, like, if you're going to bring in horns, why aren't you blowing the back of the room off? Let's get more out of those horns. Save the Children is sort of, I don't know, it's sort of tropey, and a lot of this album it symbolizes so many things, but it also gets a little bit over the edge and a little on the nose sometimes, and I feel like this is one of those songs. I listened to the other things in this song to really separate these two, because like Eric, I wasn't totally crazy about them. The guitar hooks, the backup singers, and this is what I came away with. When I listened to Save the Children, I hear 1971. Both these albums are from 1971, and so is Shaft. And I think about Shaft, and I think Shaft is cool. Shaft is dangerous. Shaft is saying something, even if it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek and blaxploitation-y. But Save the Children is like the Butters in the South Park world to Shaft. It's like you have, the preconceived snacks. You like Winger instead of, something cool. The song is just not good enough. And even though I don't really like My Wife all that much, it's better and damn near a knockdown. But, the Who was just as tired as Marvin was in this round. So I still went 10-9 for the Who with My Wife.
Okay, we have round 4 over, and we are moving on now to round 5, where we have The Song Is Over going up against God Is Love. And we have Todd leading us off in this round. Todd.
All right. Not super crazy about The Song Is Over. I think that synth sounds kind of dated. That puts me in, 1971. Right away. And I think this is where we're getting to the concept album where like I'll sing my song to whatever and sing my song to that. This has to do with like putting your stuff in the computer and getting the song out of it. So I think I could see this is like kind of related to Lifehouse. The most interesting thing in here is that Nicky Hopkins playing piano, and I think he does a really good job on this. He never really got songwriting credits, but like he's all over most of your favorite songs, and he's really, really amazing what he can do with a song. God Is Love. This is kind of a rough one too. The Adantes are doing great backups here, so apologies for whatever I said previously. They're amazing here. I don't like the way the song kind of rather ends abruptly, and now Marvin's duetting with himself, and it's really, really good. It's amazing singing. However, I put these together with each other, and I think I like The Song Is Over slightly better. So The Song Is Over takes it 10-9.
Fair enough, Pete. You're next.
Yeah, round 5. God Is Love is half of an idea.
Yeah.
It's just like the little sister for the rest of the album. We just had Butters in the round before. Now we got the little sister. And it's just at 142 when it ends, I looked up and I went, wait, where'd the song go? And I had to look around to figure out, like, I went to Spotify. I'm like, did they make a mistake? Did my wireless go out? I went over to Wikipedia to check the song length. And I'm like, no shit. That's it for that song. It just stops. And I get that in the album format. It slides right in to Mercy, Mercy Me, but it doesn't in Song v Song. And here's where the concept album pays the price a little bit for the Song v Song format. And I just thought, there's just a real producer wouldn't let this get out the door. Not like this. And I'm going to say it. There's a problem when you produce your own stuff. You get a little too self-indulgent. You get a little too easy on yourself. And this song pays the price for it. So God Is Love is just not as good as The Song Is Over. And I want to mention Nicky Hopkins on the keys for The Who, because he does a great job. And Daltrey and Townsend they're getting bigger and better as this album goes along. And I really dig where they're at. This song seems to breathe for them. And it's pretty remarkable to hear all of the different nuances that are going on and everything. Anyhow, the point being, this round, I got to make sure I check my score here and get this right. Yeah, this round is The Song Is Over 10-9.
Yeah, Pete, I felt the exact same thing with this song. I thought Spotify skipped suddenly and like, wait, I was just getting into this tune. Oh no, wait, it's only a minute and 43 seconds. Good God. Eric, you have the final slot in this round. Share your thoughts.
This is a pretty easy one. I agree with Pete. I feel that this is proof of my theory that this is Marvin Gaye's album, not your album, not anybody else's album. He did what he wanted, and he just stopped. He's like, okay, that idea's done. I'm moving on to the next. And as such, this song feels definitely incomplete. And truthfully, I just don't think it holds up at all against The Who. So this is one of the easiest rounds. Song Is Over. 10-9.
Okay, and that takes us to the halfway point. That's right, round 5 just finished in a 9-round battle. So I usually like to pause here and look back on where the scores are. So The Who is really off to a 1-round lead. So it's anybody's fight right now. There were a couple of things I heard in the commentary, and I'm going to ask each of you guys something maybe a little bit different. I'm going to start with Pete. Pete, you said they both came out in 1971. Any dating feeling in either one of these albums, considering they're both 48 years old?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, The Who's album is much more dated. That sound that they've created hasn't come along with the times. What's going on as an album is, gosh, the social themes are still relevant today. And if you change a lyric or two here and there, you could, if Marvin Gaye was still with us, he would still be performing these songs, obviously, but he would perform them with, slightly modified lyrics that were 100% on the time. And so though it's 1971 and you can hear it and you want to put your leather jacket on and your turtleneck sweater and everything, it's a relevant current album. Though it is dated, it's dated, like Brandy or something else that dates well.
Brandy, that's hilarious. You mean the song, not the drink, right?
Well, I mean the album in general, the sounds of the album, they're like cognac that are spent an extra year and a half on the ship rolling around in an oak barrel. So,
okay.
I don't think Brandy, the song, aged that well.
No, it did not. That's like, really? You think Brandy, the song, aged well, Pete? Oof. Todd, I'm going to ask you about whether the concept versus failed concept is helping or hurting either of these albums.
Yeah, I mean, Who's Next? Like, I've listened to this album so many times, not even knowing that it was related to some kind of, epic concept or failed concept of Lifehouse. And so, I don't think it really matters. Who's Next feels just more like a bag of assorted songs, than anything. I mean, there's like some themes and there's some stuff if you squint your eyes, Marvin Gaye, you're like clubbed over the head with like, this is my statement, my concept, And, one thing I got to say for what's going on, this is his 11th album and he's just getting started, boy, Motown, Tamla, they work these dudes hard, you know, like how many did the Beatles even do, you know, and like Songs in the Key of Life, that's like Stevie Wonder's 13th album or 19th or something, you know, these guys worked hard. And so it's great. He's in the studio now and he's finally coming into his own and doing that. But I agree, it's a little bit self-indulgent. There's a lot of rookie sort of producer mistakes. He definitely could have used an editor or at least a collaborator, you know. But the thing about that concept is it's timeless. It's evergreen. Like we're still struggling with these same things, you know, all these years later. And we struggled before, 48 years before this album came out. And so there's a timeless quality to it that makes it sound really good. And versus like the Who, that kind of big rock, that kind of big stuff, that goes in and out of fashion, depending on what's going on. But I feel like what's going on is just always, it's always sort of, I don't want to say tasteful, but it's always relevant. It always feels current and fresh for some reason. So
yeah,
that's sort of I think the concept like helps or harms.
Yeah. Eric, you said something earlier that I keyed in on. I want to hear a little more about that. When you said this is Marvin's album, and that was on the one song that got cut short. Do you think that that's actually working against him? Why the Who is off to a slight lead at this point?
I think it works against him, but it works for him. This is a weird situation where we have to judge things song by song. And I will say that I have a scored result, but if I went album versus album as a whole, I might have a different result. No spoilers. But
that's the big thing about Album Fight. People think it's an album versus an album, but when we do the song by song, you often get these results that don't logically make sense, where you have the favorite when people think of an album actually losing to an underdog because of the way the songs line up. It just happens that the best songs on one album go up against the worst in others and end up getting better scores.
Exactly. You to turn a couple songs or change the lineup slightly, it'll make a difference. Now, I will say, I think the Aborted Concept album for The Who probably helped. I think that Pete Townsend can get extremely preachy and a little above himself. You talk about Marvin Gaye being on the nose. Well, I mean, Townsend's very judgy. What was Baba O'Reilly about? What is Teenage Wasteland? Oh, look at these disgusting kids in front of me who are just useless on LSD and losing their mind. So he's kind of judgy. And I can't help but think that maybe having the concept aborted and giving him an editor helped a little bit.
Eric, if I could jump in really quick, the interviews that I read about this song, he meant, in fact, that the kids are wasted potential, not that they're wasted. He regretted that it became that sort of anthem for getting messed up and doing stuff like that.
Well, he wasn't celebrating it. That was a misinterpretation. But yes, he specifically mentioned Woodstock looking down at 20 plus kids zonked out of their minds, and some of them getting brain damage. I mean, I don't remember the exact quote, but you could find it out there. And you could just feel, I mean, he's very, very, he's like one of those people who discovers, like a newly formed non-smoker. When they go around.
The zeal of the newly converted.
Yeah, I kind of get that vibe. And as far as Marvin Gaye, I'd say time is helping him. Are you guys familiar with pendulum?
No.
It's essentially saying that everything in history is on an 80-year cycle. 40 years going up, 40 years going down. And we are literally repeating things, become collectivist, become individualistic, etc. And this goes all the way back to like Revolutionary War, Civil War, all kinds of history. It's very spooky when you look at it. And Asia's on the opposite cycle. So we're actually in a repeat cycle in some ways of 68, 69. If you look at the political strife, in the 60s, you had Silver Spring by Rachel, I forgot her name, but environmentalism was really coming on strong there, especially for pollution. Well, we're talking climate change is really becoming just a very heightened message. So a lot of what Marvin Gaye is saying is spot on. You have Vietnam. Here we have Iraq and Afghanistan. It does feel very topical because it's just kind of repeating the same thing that we're going through.
Well, I love that you said environmentalism, because let's get back into the fight. We're heading back into round 6, where we have Getting in Tune versus Mercy, Mercy Me, the Ecology. And I think talking about climate change is apropos here, as Pete leads us off with these two songs.
Hey, how about Wild Bill Moore's sax in that song, you know, and I love the mellotron. It's just sort of, this is one of the genre defining or instrument defining songs for the mellotron, and reading through various articles about it, I love that Princess Margaret, King Hussein of Jordan, and L. Ron Hubbard all owned mellotrons. That's just such a
yeah.
I really enjoyed that note. Look, this song demands to be played 50 years later. It's always going to be on the radio. It will help keep radio alive, because when this song comes on, you nod your head, you'll crank the volume up, and even if you don't pay attention to the words, just like that submarine sonar pinging kind of sound that you hear in there, it just resonates for some reason. And you hear different musicians use that thing today, like Justin Timberlake has that sound in song. So this is, again, one of the greatest songs of all time on one of the best albums of all time. I will say this, though, as we get deeper in the fight, I've realized that What's Going On's reputation is largely built on Mercy, Mercy Me and What's Going On as songs. The rest of the album suffers. And Marvin is a big, powerful puncher, and he's looking to land his big, Ernie Shavers hook, to use Ernie Shavers as an example. But The Who is just a more complete package. He's just, all of the people, the strings, everything that Marvin Gaye had to throw at this album are not matching up with The Who's power. Not a power trio, but the four of them, because Daltrey can sing as good as Marvin can, although Marvin probably beats him round for round, but you have to also beat Keith Moon and everything else. So I love Mercy, Mercy Me. It's going to win this thing, partly because, and I'm going to bring Corey Farley in, he won the mixtape challenge recently. It's a mid-tempo number, and I don't think that's their home speed. Mid-tempo numbers just doesn't work for them. They want to get bigger. They want to get faster and those kind of things. So they kind of go away from their home pace with this mid-tempo. And maybe they're just resting up to wipe this rest of the fight out. But for me, this song is a pretty clear win. It's 10-9 Mercy, Mercy Me.
Well said, Pete. Eric. Let's see what you have to say.
I almost feel like it's what do you have to say for yourself? I don't know. Honestly, I love both these songs. And this is one of those that I literally went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Something about Getting in Tune just spoke to me slightly more. I liked their mid-tempo. I liked I don't know. I felt like it breathed just slightly better. And I know I'm going against the legendary classic, but it's kind of like you got to pick one. So I went 10-9 for The Who.
Yeah, we call that cut the baby. I think Pete coined the phrase. We don't like ties. We allow them. If you just flat out cannot find a winner, a 10-10 is allowed, but whoever does it usually gets called out as a coward and gets roasted for the rest of the fight. So I'm glad you found a way to cut the baby on a close round. Let's see if Todd had to cut the baby. I'm guessing he might have. Todd, you're up.
All right. Okay, so Getting in Tune, I'm less interested in this song, I think, than the other two judges are. It starts off so strong, and it's amazing with the kind of careful singing, and it's a really cool statement of sort of ennui and being tired of superficial, relationships or whatever, and it's really cool. But then I feel like it just runs out of ideas, and then they just say, riding on you, which I thought was riding on you. They just say that over and over, and getting in tune with a straight and narrow. I just feel like there's maybe stick another verse instead of saying the same thing over and over again. But it starts off so strong. It's it's disappointing. Mercy, Mercy Me is great. I think Eric said earlier, what does Berry Gordy know? Well, they had to explain to him what ecology was when this song came out. So what's that? Feels like he was way out in front on this issue, and it still feels kind of relevant. And this is a good example because it sounds very similar to God Is Love. It sounds also very similar to What's Going On. So it's, you could say it's kind of samey, or you could say, oh, it's thematic. These are leitmotifs. I'm going to be generous and say it was the latter. And I love the sax solo on this, which I think Pete pointed out. I love the way it's mic'd. It's just not right up and in your face. It has like a little bit of distortion, and it's a little bit thin and reedy, and it sounds so good. And it's a great, you very rarely hear saxophone solos like that. You know, they're more like Baker Street, like, here we go, turn up the pots, you know. And this has a muted, subdued thing, which I think fits perfectly in this song. And then at the end, I love those little creepy, weird little chords that are going on as the song just kind of peters out. So for me, this was easy. Mercy, Mercy Me, 10-9.
Fair enough. And that takes us all the way to round 7, sometimes known as the Burford round. This is where we sometimes will get a little bit of ear fatigue. Let's see if that happened in this particular fight. We have Going Mobile going up against Right On. And Eric, you get to lead us off.
Okay, this is almost the reverse of the last round. I like Going Mobile and how it starts, but it just, it kind of peters out. It's not as strong. Whereas Right On, I really get into. He's got a nice long groove going, and I don't know if it's a fair comparison, but I love the song Spill the Wine, and this has that same kind of vibe in there. I don't know if anybody else has heard that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it's just such a cool, just chilling tune. I mean, it's a very easy decision, 10-9. Marvin Gaye.
Okay, Todd, let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah. All right. So Going Mobile, it's funny. It's like a throwaway song. I feel like Pete Townsend has maybe 1,000 of these songs in his notebook that he could come out with. You know, it still does some super interesting stuff. And, you know, singing is really good. The acoustic work is really good. And I love that little envelope filter that he has on it, you know, but, you know, ultimately it feels like a trifle next to these other kind of towering songs, you know, this like, hey, I'm driving around in my mobile home and hanging out. So I like it, and I like it for what it is, but compared to Right On, which is so great, my notes are like, oh, hell yeah, like funk piano, then a flute, then a guiro, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like, this is what it's all about, you know. And plus we're sort of getting a break and finding all this, you know, minor key gloom stuff. You know, the only part I don't like is where it slows down for sort of those like last verse or two, but then it picks up again. It's just super funky, and it's a really cool song. And I, like you said, I love Spill the Wine. I love this song. So this is easy. Right On takes this 10-9.
Okay, so that's 2 for Marvin. Pete, what do you think?
Let's just keep it going. This round was actually a little tough for me. Like Eric said, it was almost the inverse of the last one, and I had a little trouble cutting the baby on this, but then I got there. I broke my sword out and started chopping. Going Mobile is fun, and I guess it's kind of McCartney-esque, and I guess maybe that was Townsend just going, I can write a whimsical, jingly kind of song. And does that, but there's just enough things in there that just don't sit well, like the beep beep that's in there. You know, now you're actually stepping on the Beatles. Baby, you can drive my car. The line "air conditioned gypsy," I thought, like, dude, you can do better than that. You know, whatever. Yeah. It was just like you said, Todd, he's got 1,000 of these in his notebook. And of course it's catchy. And of course you're going to use it in a commercial because it's hooky as hell, but that's just not very good. And if I want to hear about someone driving around, again, I went outside the album and I thought about Sammy Hagar. And if you want to talk about driving and being on the road, that's a better song. And it's not even close. I mean, that'd be a 10-9, possibly a 10-7. So It's a big difference, and I can't see Going Mobile standing up to Right On, and Right On, it suffers from the same thing the other second tier songs suffer from on this album, is that they're second tier. There isn't that discipline to get this great song to really elevate into something special. This is that good versus great thing. They don't get to great. They're right at the edge. It's just not enough, but it is a lot more than Going Mobile. 10-9 for Marvin Gaye.
Yeah, I noticed everybody is harsh on Going Mobile, that it just doesn't deliver as well as other songs from this album. Yet it was a unanimous 10-9, but it was just 10-9, which means Right On wasn't good enough to take a weak song and put it on it.
And it should have been.
Yeah. It should have been. This is also one of the rounds that wasn't just unanimous for the 3 main judges, but was also unanimous in combination with the compubox. So all 5 that scored gave this 10-9 to Right On.
Yeah, but it's a, you know, you think about Going Mobile, there are so many better songs about
Route
driving
66,
around.
Everybody.
Yeah, Radar Love. I thought that might date me, but I was thinking about
Radar
that
Love's
song.
awesome.
But yeah, there's just so many driving songs like "Diamonds in the Windshield" by Tom Waits. There's so many. It lacks that kind of
Fly on the
driving element to it. You know,
Depeche Mode.
Yeah, GTO. Yeah, there's lots. Okay, enough rambling. We have a fight to do, and we've got the penultimate round coming up. That is right. Round 8. We have Behind Blue Eyes going up against Holy Holy. Ooh, this is going to be a fun one. Todd, you're up.
All right. Holy Holy, I'm going to start with that. It's a rather ponderous song. It has a lot of emoting, but not a whole lot of structure. It was hard for me to sort of connect with the song. I appreciated, like, maybe it's like a reprise or it's like the same theme as God is Love, and it's, working through that. But I was less interested in this song. Behind Blue Eyes, it's funny because I had a friend in high school and she loved The Who. She loved everything about The Who, and then she hated this song. And so whenever this song comes on, I always think about her, like, why does she hate this song when it's such a great song? The fun fact I learned researching this song was Roger Daltrey's dog got run over on the day he did the vocals. So there's an extra layer of sort of pathos in the performance because his dog, he said his dog had blue eyes, which I thought was kind of funny. But anyway, Behind Blue Eyes, kind of pretentious, but somehow it rocks and somehow it hangs together. And I think it's an epic sort of great song. I don't know what to call it, a ballad or a rocker or what, but I just love this song. So Behind Blue Eyes easily takes it 10-9.
Okay, Pete, let's see what you have to say.
Yeah, holy shit. It's just not good enough. It's look, the strength and reputation of the album, again, like, it's not built on this song. No one plays this. No one cares to hear it. They're like, just play Mercy, Mercy Me again, because it's just, look, there's no one else in the room who's going to hold Marvin accountable for himself. I get that this is his album and it's his view of the world, but this is where someone like Bono would come in and say, write that song from another point of view. We've already heard this song. We've already heard this over and over again. If these are the only things you have, you're going to have to do better. It's a 9-track fight. You cannot come back with the same path. This is the round 2 plan all over again. And right now, the Who have got Marvin measured. They are feeding him leather left and right. His eyes are closed. This is getting ugly. And I'm looking over at the corner, at Marvin's corner, to see if anybody will throw a towel in for him, because he's just getting hammered. This is 10-8. Let me tell you about Behind Blue Eyes real quick, though. It's a fantastic song. It was remade by Limp Bizkit, and it was good. First off, fuck Rolling Stone. They're pretentious dicks, and they don't like us. Like, this song is so good. It was a hit 40 years apart from its original hit. And they had a See and Say actually singing in it.
Yeah.
And it was still a hit song. So, look, Townsend does really well here. It's not even close to the best song on the album, but it is what the Who. It's why the Who are great. This is just maybe the third or fourth best song for them from here. So this is a really wipeout round for the Who. It's 10-8 Behind Blue Eyes.
Yeah, this is an arena rocker for sure. Eric.
Yeah, this is easy. Well, okay, I said earlier the easiest round, but that was to that point. This is probably the easiest round of the whole fight. And Todd, part of the reason your friend might not have liked the song is it is written from the perspective of a villain or a killer, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
And she might have gotten a violence vibe out of it. I don't know.
You're right. No, that's an interesting theory. I think you're right, though. It is a different perspective. And in the notes that I read, it said it's somebody who believes he's the good guy, but, is twisted up inside for whatever reason.
Every villain is the hero in their own story. And that's part of what I like about this song is it's taking a completely different perspective and flipping it around. So if you consider as part of the concept album, this is the villain kind of saying, woe is me, this is my tune. And I just love the production values. I love the lyrics. I love the tone. It's probably my favorite Who song at the moment. So very easy round. I probably should have gone further on it, but I did 10-9 because I'm a coward.
That's okay. No. 10-10 would be a coward. 10-9 is just not making a stand. That takes us through to our final round of the fight. That's right. The Who and Marvin will meet in the middle, touch gloves, go back to their corners, and come at each other with Won't Get Fooled Again going up against Inner City Blues. And Pete, give us your scores here for round 9.
Yeah, we won't get fooled again in Inner City Blues. These are two good songs again, going toe to toe. You know, Marvin got his talking to, saying if he didn't come out and fight, you know, they were going to throw the towel in on him. So he comes out and he gets after it, and I love it. I want to make sure, because there's so many people on What's Going On, and gosh, most of them are dead, by the way. But Jack Brokenska, who did fantastic work on percussion. Jack Ashford, also percussion. This album wouldn't be what it is without their work hitting the skins. And how about Bob Babbitt subbing in at bass a number of times, and on huge songs he plays the bass. And his work definitely helps define this album as well, because his bass lines make this a special album. In general, the Inner City Blues theme is fantastic. I like that Marvin is writing about this, but frankly, I don't see enough separation between what he's done already and this song. I wish he found some different points of view to sing from, or again, had another adult in the room to say, do it again, do it again, do it again. Think about this. Songs in the Key of Life, which Todd mentioned earlier, or The Chronic, right? If you put either Stevie Wonder or Dr. Dre in the room with Marvin Gaye in 71 and he comes out, this album is significantly better. It's at least got more depth and richness to it. And maybe Marvin wasn't able to do it. Maybe he was just so unhealthy at the time that he wasn't going to be able to get anything better than this effort. But if this won't do it, we won't get fooled again. Just like Bob O'Reilly, they use the synthesizer, and they just... the tone, the feel, the forces, everything all comes together. This is The Who doing what The Who does at their peak level. This is two good songs going together, so it's 10-9 for The Who.
Okay, so we've got Pete's score here. Todd, you're up next. Let's hear your round 9.
Similar to the first round, I have way too many notes on this, so I'm going to try to be concise. Just use the hook and pull me off stage if I say too much. So let's start with Inner City Blues, Make Me Wanna Holler. This song is so great. It's just a cry of anguish, you know. And this sort of has the theme of the album. You think about everything going on in Marvin Gaye's life, like his partner died on stage in his arms. His brother came back from Vietnam, told him about the horrors of that. All this stuff was going on. He was thinking about abandoning his music career, and this is really his. Just, you know, it's an amazing statement, and it's amazing. Just kind of a howl at just how things are. And I've always admired people that could do that. Like, you know, like their life falls apart and they just make this amazing art, and out of it, you know, I just sort of get in bed and then don't get out. You know, again, the amazing bass. One of the lyrics I wanted to point out was that one about rockets, moonshots, spend it on the have-nots. You know, it's interesting now to think more people were against the space program than were for it at that time. If you would have polled a bunch of people, they say this is a waste of money. We shouldn't be doing it. It's similar to like Whitey on the Moon by Gil Scott-Heron. It's always interesting, you know, when we look back and we're like, oh, that was awesome, we went to the moon. And then you look at the time, it's like, hey, we got all these problems we got to spend it on. So that's kind of interesting artifact or attitude. Now, Won't Get Fooled Again. This is an amazing song. I love this song. It's perfect on every level. It's political without being specific. It's about what rock and roll is about, being dissatisfied with the status quo and then getting change and then being dissatisfied with that. And it's a fantastic song. I know Roger Daltrey's tired of singing it, but his vocals are amazing. The guitar solos, all 26 of them, are great. Towards the end, it's, you know, you can hear sort of a, I don't know, it might be saying too much, but like a prefiguring of punk. I mean, it's just very, very discordant, rocking out on the guitar. It's amazing what he's doing. It's like it's in a different song, and it just kind of like got flown in and dropped in the song. I love this song. The other thing I think we need to point out is the Paul is Dead clues that were also embedded here and in other Who songs. So you have the parting on the left is now the parting on the right. That's very clearly a Paul is Dead reference. Very similar to I See Right Through Your Plastic Mac from Substitute. So you see that as well, that they threw in a few of these things. And if you find a webpage, there's a very dark hole that talks about Who lyrics and Paul is Dead. So anyway, so I have to point that out. So it gets even an extra point for the clues in there, which I don't think were intentional, to be serious. So easily Won't Get Fooled Again takes this 10-9.
You talk about the Daltrey singing and that iconic scream. When I listen, I also listen for what parts of the songs we want to put into the episode. That scream comes in at like 7:42. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an 8-minute song that doesn't feel like an 8-minute song. So
Yeah.
it's just amazing. And as the new guy here, Eric, you get to close out the final round with your score. So lay down some knowledge.
One thing I have to point out is the irony. Pete pointed out about how many people died around Marvin Gaye and have died this day. Well, half the Who is dead.
Yeah.
And both
I
were
prefer to think
drugs.
they're half alive.
Oh, there you go.
I'm an optimist.
Well, and that was another thing that I kind of observed myself is you have Pete Townsend being a little preachy and talking about lifestyle, and it's the lifestyle that killed two members of the same band he's in.
Mm-hmm.
But moving forward, Won't Get Fooled Again. I really think this song easily takes it to. I like the Marvin Gaye song Inner City Blues, but it's the same song. We're kind of like I guess it's an essay. It's like, I said it, now I'm going to say it, now I'll say it again. So he's just closing up on his thesis. The Won't Get Fooled Again, love it. It's an epic song. Obviously it goes down as a classic. I almost think there's another layer of humor in it, like they themselves, you won't get fooled again, about them. So there's a little touch of irony in that, and it makes me think of My Generation, and they have that kind of quirky humor. And then you brought up the Paul is Dead stuff, which I never even knew, but that sounds about typical. So easy 10-9 Who.
And with that score, we now have an album fight in the books. Before we go judge by judge and look at the scores, we're going to hear from Richard on his post-fight analysis. Richard, how did we come out against your projections?
Okay, one might think that this is somehow an upset or somehow not predicted, but as I started looking at the numbers and hearing what the judges had to say, it all starts coming into form and making sense. Let me explain. First of all, the prediction that who'd ever win the first round would win the fight was wrong, but that was human element. That's on me, and I'll accept that. Now, that said, I disagree with the three judges' choices. I personally think Baba O'Reilly is a little bit better than What's Going On. That's personal preference, though. But why did this turn out to be kind of a landslide or a straightforward win for Who's Next? Well, I'd said that everything was super even with this fight on the pre-fight numbers. But if you remember, I also said that the one thing where it wasn't close was in the song v song categories. In other words, the popularity of the songs versus each other by round. And there it wasn't even close. Out of 30 or 27 potential points, 8 went to What's Going On, while 14 went to Who's Next, with only 5 ties. So even if all 5 of those ties go to What's Going On, it's still not going to beat Who's Next. So in a sense, the numbers kind of pointed the direction here. Now, why did it become so even? Well, the thing we have to take into consideration here is What's Going On is a culturally significant album, critically and culturally significant. And that's great. And it's got important themes and important concepts and stuff in that's very important, and especially for its time. The problem is, these fights aren't about cultural significance. They're about song versus song. And here, I should have just gone with the numbers. I got to admit it. I let the human element come into play a little bit too much here. This was a clear winner when it came to straight song v song. So, great job by the judges. They really tore through this. They had some great points about the differences between these albums. And this was a neat one. This was very interesting. See y'all next week.
Great. Yeah, this was a tough fight indeed. And the personal preferences and the human factor, as we always call it, with the judges is always going to make a difference. We have a unanimous decision, and it's not just unanimous for you 3 judges, it's actually unanimous in the compubox as well. But in every case, it was a very, very close matchup. We have Eric scoring us 86-85 in favor of The Who. We have Pete scoring us 87-83, so a little bit more in favor of The Who. And then Todd also 86-85, so 1 point difference. But The Who wins this, so Marvin gets to be a little bit more introspective in the hospital later this afternoon. So hearing The Who winning this, let's go with Pete first. You were leaning more towards The Who. Why do you think The Who took it so much more on your scorecard, Pete?
When you get a chance to do your own album and you get to produce it and write it and everything, you have to deliver if you're going to do it. I was rough on Stevie Wonder when he made mistakes when he self-produced. I just think that albums, from what I've seen, albums typically don't withstand self-production. You need someone in there to have a bigger idea, to know how to get more out of you. And as limited as Marvin Gaye was throughout his career because of drugs and depression and all the other things, it would have been good to spend money on someone who would really hold him to task and really get something truly special out of him. He still gets there. It's still a great album. I mean, obviously, it's one of the, according to a lot of different publications, it's one of the top 10 albums of all time, and the social themes remain. But there just was not enough variety. There wasn't enough separation. And I saw The Who doing so many more things, just so many different styles and influences and people who were influenced by them. So it just, for me, it wasn't even a close fight. It's actually, I think a little less of what's going on now. And then I realized I really don't listen to anything except for 2 songs from that album. So that's what's reflected in my score, is just the lack of separation, the lack of that last person to curate a deeper and more enriching experience. That's why I went with The Who overall.
Fair enough. Todd, your score was a lot closer, but still went for The Who. What do you think was the difference maker here?
Yeah, I think The Who had a bunch of great songs, and they're epic, towering, rock songs that you hear. You can hear them on 3 stations in any given major market on the radio. And Marvin Gaye, it's an album, it's a concept, like an album in the old sense of like it's an album, and it's meant to be put on and played and listened to all the way through. Whereas you could just take a song out of Who's Next, even any random song, and it's great, and it plays great, and it's fun to listen to, and it does that. I think some of the other songs that Marvin Gaye requires the context of the rest of the album to make sense.
Fair enough. And taking us home here, Eric, your first album fight. Want to hear what you thought of the process, but I also want to hear what you thought about how The Who pulled out a victory ever so slight on your card.
Process is fine. I already said it earlier. The reason why The Who won is because the order of the songs. Truthfully, the Marvin Gaye, I've never listened to the album prior to this point. And every time I play it, I like it better. So I don't know that I'm not a few plays away from bringing it ahead.
Interesting.
Because as I hear it, because it all sounds the same, right? But yet it doesn't. It's one of those that I have to listen to it enough to start picking up the nuance in between. Another album that just I love and it grew on me over time was Lou Reed, New York. And that's maybe my favorite album of all time. But it's just one of those that it kind of was like, the first few times I heard it. But as I hear it more and more and more, and I feel like the Marvin Gaye is sort of that way too. Like I get the surface level, okay, it's very similar, but on each subsequent play, I start to hear the other tones inside, which enrich it.
When I was listening, I felt that Marvin Gaye went much, much better when I listened to it end to end without any interruptions.
Right.
And when I listened to it straight track versus track to set up the fight, that's where Marvin Gaye seemed to lose a lot of momentum because his songs really are designed to flow into each other.
Yeah, it's like a hits album versus a concept album.
Yeah. So that was where I thought the Who took the lead, was just the format of song v song. So that was it for me. But I'm glad that you gave What's Going On a listen, and we'll listen to it more, because that is one of the themes for this entire show. Is we want to try and introduce people to music they haven't heard before. And this is kind of our disclaimer. We love music. We love these albums. They don't make it into the fight unless they are good enough to make it into the ring. We may be critical on songs, but we do that because the judges have to do that. That's part of the Song v. Song format. But we love this music, and we really want listeners to give these a spin. Queue them up on Spotify, go out and buy them if you still like buying CDs. We support the artists, and we love music. That's why we do Album Fight. So we have yet another fight finished in the books, and I wanted to thank my 3 judges for coming onto the show, spending your Sunday morning talking about music, which I love doing. Any last words before we end the show?
Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you, Eric.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for adjusting the software that you used to make up for me for getting my laptop.
The show's sounding great, and I appreciate all of you guys coming on. Pete, any last words?
Yeah, just in general to you, Mike, this is, as you know, this is a lot of work. In between you, me, and Damien, we spend a number of hours in advance of what the judges spend on doing this. So I appreciate you enabling us to be able to do this, because without you, I couldn't. I run out of time. So thanks, man, for taking this on and producing these fantastic episodes. I get a real kick out of it, and I love that it's alive and going.
Yeah, I'll mention Pete and I have been friends since elementary school, so we go way back, and I am so glad to be doing this show with Pete, a lifelong friend and practically a brother. So we have more album fights on the way. We will be spinning these out on a weekly basis, so you listeners that like it, be prepared to hear one every week. And we'll talk to the rest of you guys again. I'd love to get you lined up for some future fights.